I just hugged Jesus. And he really is that tall. Thanks for coming, man.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
We're so blessed to have you here as our guest and being transparent, just making yourself available to us. Just great to have you with us here in San Diego. And we know we're going to talk about the passion. We're going to talk about your new project, Word of Promise, and a little bit about you. But tell us a little bit about yourself. We know you're a husband, a family man, you've got kids. Tell us a little bit about your family.
I'm from the state of Washington. And
we won't hold that against him, right? Seahawks, I don't know.
Cowboys.
Can you diss me in my own house? I mean, what's up with that? You know.
My wife, 14 years. We both are from Washington State, and we have 2 adopted children from China. One is 10, and one is 8.
Awesome. And you're a Harley guy. You like to ride.
Yeah.
We knew we had a common bond. We started talking about he rode his motorcycle down this weekend, and I said, okay, this guy's got to be a Christian. He's got to be all right, because we know the Lord's down with Harleys and motorcycles. So. Okay, let's get back on track. Sorry.
All right.
Talk about motorcycles, you get off track. But the passion, global phenomenon, incredible theatrical masterpiece, literally reached worldwide. Still the #1 R-rated selling movie of all time. Incredibly, beating The Matrix Revolution, beating Saving Private Ryan, just phenomenal. And so tell us a little bit about the journey of how you got that part and were able to get into that role, and meeting Mel, and kind of how that transpired.
I met Steve McAvity, his producing partner, at a picnic bench one day. They called my agent up, and but they didn't want to let out that it was a passion movie about Jesus. So they sent me a script called Mavericks that they're actually considering doing. And the script wasn't that good. So that's what I told them firsthand. And then about 40 minutes in, Mel Gibson shows up. And he, in person, very shy, always looking down, and he smokes nonstop. And yeah, and but for 15 years, as I got to know him, that he had 15 years that he felt in his heart that God was calling him to make this movie. And he knew what would happen if he did this movie. And eventually, they used the surfing movie as a front, and he started talking about Jesus this and Jesus that, different thing, and I'm looking at him thinking about Jesus on a surfboard.
Right? He walks on water, but he might not surf, right?
Yeah. So I said, you want me to play Jesus? And he says, yeah. And the next day, he called me at home, and he tried to talk me out of it. And that's how it is. You make a commitment to Christ that you're going to do that, and then the devil comes in and sifts you out. And all of a sudden, I shouldn't have had this meeting. I shouldn't have done this. I've done all these things, and people will find out eventually that this is the kind of person I am. And I can't do this movie. I'm the wrong guy. I shouldn't direct this. And so he called me. He says, if you do this movie, you may never work in this town again. I don't want to be responsible for that. And I felt the fear, because I thought of all the nice things that I have, and I realized that God had got me into this business, that my talent came from God, not from man. And so I said, look, man, we're all called to carry our own cross. If you don't pick up and carry your cross, you will be crushed by the weight of it. He got real quiet on the phone, and I said, oh my. He said, what? I said, I just realized my initials are JC, and I'm 33 years old. And he says, God, you're freaking me out. And hung up the phone.
Yeah, enough said, right? Yeah. It's kind of a, well, yeah. He what can you say? You know, I mean, kind of portrays the lifestyle that he's in now. But you know, as you built a relationship with him and you accepted the role, obviously there were incredibly hard physical demands upon you, you know, learning the language, just obviously the climate you were going to be working in. Talk about your preparation for the role and what it took from you.
Well, initially I just said, all right, here's a script. I read it, and okay, this is what you do with any script, and I start researching it. And this one was right to the Bible. But what was amazing is that everybody wants resurrection, nobody wants suffering. But can you have the gold medal without suffering? Mm-hmm. Can you sit on, does a man when he's sitting there and his country's flag is going up and he's got a gold medal around his neck and he's weeping, is he going, I'm crying because Nike just called and is giving me a $30 million contract? That right. Must be it. Yeah. Or is it that I see the sacrifice, I see my family suffering, I see them you're joined to a lot of other people that have given so much into your country and to people that have given their life for God and paying with their own blood. And you hear the Star-Spangled Banner. Much the same way, in this piece, I wanted this thing to transcend. If I'm going to do this movie, I don't want to do the passion of mediocrity or something that is a little pagan, that he wasn't handed over by his own, that only the Romans were so responsible. Mm-hmm. But if you look at it day after day, that we all are part of handing Christ over when we contribute to sin, especially when we betray him and we are Christians. Mm-hmm. But Jesus then continues to tell us to get back up, to try, to keep going. Mm-hmm. Doing the movie and going about doing this movie was, you know, thinking that if we had done this thing in a controlled set, you would have never saw the performance. It was truly birthed in pain. Wow. And it immediately threw me on my face. So right from the get-go, I had my shoulders separated. At that point, I'm thinking, you know, God, hey, hello, we're trying to do a movie here. You know, I'm an actor. Right. Just an actor here. You're letting, you know, the devil or whatever to destroy us. Yeah. At the same time, we're getting phone calls and stuff from major publications saying, expressed interest that Mel Gibson is anti-Semitic. And all this stuff is compounding over and over. The cursing, I remember at one point, Mel Gibson he would take God's name in vain. And I would say, hey, as Jesus. And looking as Jesus, and I said, don't take my Father's name in vain.
Yeah, yeah.
and so that I'd become him. And it was a big part of that. I don't want people to see me. I want them to see Jesus. Sure. That when people come to the theater, that what they experience is they can look right at themselves the way God sees them. Not the way we see ourselves, but the way God sees us. And that's who you really are. Yeah. And so, again, I was scourged, accidentally whipped. During the carrying of the cross, my shoulder was dislocated. Up on the cross, I had, you know, I weighed 210 pounds. In the filming, I was about 168. I was so sick, I kept throwing up. I had both lungs filled with fluid, pneumonia. After the movie was over, many people don't know, and I don't talk about it too much, but I have to have heart surgery. Wow. So I was struck by lightning on the last shot of the day. So
that's kind of a moving encounter right there.
So what I'm telling you, wow. You know, if you want to be a Christian, you know, you're in for it.
Yeah, we've got these buzzers under the seat, you know. If you feel something hot, it's Jim's fault, not ours. Just blame it on Jesus, right? So we're going to look at a couple of clips. In just a minute, we're going to look at the whipping scene and the thrashing scene. And I understand that during the flogging, Mel kind of impromptu made some adjustments that were not in your favor.
During the scourging scene on accident, we didn't really rehearse this. We had a metal plank on my about a foot away from my back, right here, and I'm standing right here, and they would hit the metal plank. And then there's 1, 2, 3 cameras on this particular day, and Mel, in the middle of the shoot, because these guys don't speak English, and we don't speak Italian, so there's a translation problem. So he's telling Caridi, his assistant, to translate to them, to tell him to hit Jim like baseball, like a pitcher in a baseball game. And they're like, what? They don't play baseball. And he's like, oh, cricket. So they went back here and took a run like this. And I'm sitting here like that, and they hit the metal plank, except with that momentum, the whip went over, and 14-inch gash on my back. And I went right down, like in a football game where you get the wind knocked out of you.
Why, did it hurt or something? Is that why you...
No, I saw God.
Well, let's roll the clip. Let's talk a little bit about the whipping, and we're gonna just walk through it a little bit. Let's roll that. So they're not being kind in this moment. They're kind of jerking you around a little bit. Pause it right there. Pause it right there. Oh, maybe we could go back just slightly.
Sure.
I'm kind of just thinking to myself, you're hearing them flexing the bows in the back. What's going through your mind at that point?
At that point, I'm thinking about all my sins. The whole part was, I'm not worthy to play this role.
Yeah.
And that's a good place to be in. I told a friend of mine that, and, he says, well, Jim, God doesn't always choose the best. But he chose you. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
So, I was in a place of deep, just like in the zone.
Yeah.
And throughout the whole film, I was always meditating and always praying the whole time.
Yeah.
And as you would say, staying in character. And this was important because I knew that for only the people that would be able to see Jesus is through the prayer, the daily prayer and the fasting. And the fasting was immediate because of the sickness. At the end of the movie, when I was on the cross, my body's blue. There was no makeup. My body was actually blue. Wow. Between takes, as I'm here, they would take me down, and every time my shoulder was locked in, there was a 1,000-foot cliff, and it would hit the cross and would snap my shoulder out of joint. And I was just beyond. And at that point, I was so sick that it would be ripped out, and I honestly, I could barely feel it anyway. I was so gone, but something was wrong with my heart. And the man put a stethoscope on my heart, and he said, Mel, he can die. And at that point, Mel, some of the greatest things about Mel Gibson was that he was a gambling man. And he said, Jim, what do you think? And I said, I'm going... Between me and God, this is between me and God, because I never thought I was good enough.
Wow.
And at that moment, it was, I'm ready to go home. So you can take me here, there's no problem. But I knew if I died making this movie, I knew that so many people would be saved.
Yeah.
At the end of the movie, I was walking up the mountainside. As I got up about halfway, everybody's in location. About 250 people. About halfway up, I felt this presence come over me, an evil presence, and it was, "You're a dead man." And I remember thinking, this is the best news. This is where I was. This is the best news I've ever had, because I know if I die, I'm going to heaven.
Yeah.
I got to the top. About the fifth take, the clouds were so low, the thunder and lightning was the sound of a howitzer. It was so powerful that you could feel the earth move.
Yeah.
And I saw two people that were about as close as these two are to me, and their eyes were looking up and they were watering like they were going to cry. And my hair, I couldn't feel it. And I heard a huge gasp in the audience because they saw something, and I couldn't hear anything. It was like an eye of a storm. If you're in the eye of the storm, your hair could be blowing. It could be 30-knot winds, and I'd never heard the wind blowing. It was silence. 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1, and this light came right down from heaven and lit me up. What people witnessed was an illumination around my body and a fire on the right and left side of my head. And for one moment, I was looking at myself outside my body.
You got struck with lightning.
I was struck by lightning.
Yeah.
And there were 3 groups of people. Pastor Miles mentioned that, asked me this yesterday. Was it true? There were a lot of people that were very indifferent about being extras in the movie. I said, yes, tremendous amount. In fact, there were 3 groups of people, and there were the believers, and there were the non-believers, and there were the fence riders. They're the ones that are very indifferent about it. Mm-hmm. 2 of those are bad decisions, but what was amazing is that people who think they're fence riding think that that's not a choice. It is a choice. Mm-hmm. You are fence riding, and that is a decision that one is making. Mm-hmm. And but when I was hit, everybody fell on their face. Amazing. The ground shook. Yeah. And from that point, that was the last shot of the movie.
In a second, we're gonna look at that last scene when they dropped the cross into the ground and it shook. And yeah. you were telling me over our conversation that because where you were elevated, the wind would blow and the cross would move, and your shoulder would continually come out of socket, mm-hmm. and the pneumonia had set into your lungs and some of those things. Tell us about that.
I think, I couldn't breathe very well. Obviously, people, when you're hung on a cross, you die by asphyxiation, suffocation. Yeah. But physically, I was struggling. But our Lord was letting me feel a little bit of what He went through. Yeah. And He was sustaining me, mm-hmm. but to a point of, how far do you want to go with this? Mm-hmm. How much do you want the world to see of me? Wow. And I said, every bit of it. Well, then you're in for it. It's kind of like, Lord, I want to drink can you drink the cup that I'm going? Yes, we can. Mm-hmm. We can, James and John, asking mm-hmm. that we want to sit at your right and left-hand side. Mm-hmm. So it was given. But, it's funny, I'm in San Diego. When I was a young man, I came out at 18, and I wanted to be a Navy SEAL. I didn't know what Navy SEALs were. They started talking about frogmen. At 18, I told my dad this is what I wanted to do, and I applied to the United States Naval Academy 3 times. I was going to give my life, but in a different way. God had reserved that in me. I see those guys when they go through buds, and I said, there's no way you can make it through unless you're willing to say, it's okay if I die here at buds. Yeah. Because I want to give my life for something. Uh-huh. And there's nothing better for me than to give my life for Jesus Christ.
Tremendous. Let's roll that clip of the crucifixion scene.